Another twist of fate has put away Kingley. Another twist of fate swings for home, opens up 4 lengths, a 5-length lead for another twist of fate, a 7-length lead as he comes to the 16th pole. And look at this. He is the real deal. Another twist of fate. They didn't know if he had the class, but he certainly did.
All right, here we go. What's up? Welcome back to the Racing Rundown podcast, episode number 15. I'm sorry I misordered the episodes on Twitter, but we are back. It is a lot later than I intended it to be. I originally wanted this to come out on Thursday. I had to push it back until today, but better late than never. I guess you can look at it that way. The Preakness is this weekend. I don't want to say it's a less interesting Preakness than the Kentucky Derby. There's not as much star power in this year's Preakness. There was definitely a lot of horses in the Kentucky Derby this year that not necessarily were draw horses, but it was a very deep Kentucky Derby field. Not so much with this Preakness. There's a lot of horses running in this race that either were beaten in the Kentucky Derby. There's a lot of horses. The highest finisher in this race is Improbable, who finished 5th. I believe it was I think Improbable was 5th. There was a statistic that said this is the first time since 1951 where the top 4 finishers from the Kentucky Derby, none of them are here, which obviously is very unusual. Usually the Kentucky Derby winner comes to Pimlico for the Preakness. Unfortunately, Country House, the actual winner of the Kentucky Derby, came down with a fever, and Bill Mott decided not to run him in the Preakness. I don't really think Bill Mott ever wanted to run Country House in the Preakness. Again, I don't have that sourced, but Country House didn't look like that Pimlico favored Country House at all. And, I think it's better for the horse in the long run that he's not running in the Preakness. And then, of course, the winner of the Kentucky Derby that was disqualified, Maximum Security, is also not here because of injuries sustained in the Kentucky Derby. It wasn't significant, but it was enough to keep him out of the Preakness. So Improbable is the highest placing horse from the Kentucky Derby that's in the Preakness this year. Other returning horses include Win Win Win, Bodie Express, War of Will, the horse that caused all the controversy, and that's actually it. So there's only 4 horses returning from the Kentucky Derby this year. So kind of disappointing, but not as bad. So like I said, there's not as much star power. None of the horses from the Kentucky Derby, I would say, are particularly superstars. They're all solid horses. Improbable has shown that he is a very good racehorse. Bodie Express, I think, even though he is a maiden, has some talent. War of Will definitely was affected a little bit by the issue that happened with Maximum Security. And if Win 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 can get stuff to go his way, then he's a very interesting horse. So the 4 horses that are returning from the Kentucky Derby are all somewhat interesting, but the most intriguing thing about the Preakness, and even if Maximum Security and Country House were here, the most intriguing thing about the Preakness is still the new shooters, because this is, even if we did have some of the superstars from the Derby, like if we got horses like Country House and Maximum Security, now not that I'm saying that Country House is a superstar, I want to clarify that. He was a 65 to 1 shot. I think Country House in his next few races is going to come back down to earth, but if we had the horses like Maximum Security in any of the top 3, then it would still be a very compelling Preakness for new shooters, because we knew that there were going to be a lot of horses. There were 3 races in the spring that provided win in your in slots, which is not something that the Kentucky Derby has in that language, although the 100-point prep races are essentially win in your in. But the Preakness provided the El Camino Real Derby, won by another twist of fate. I've already made the Preakness profile video about him. If you want to know my full opinions on another twist of fate, you can check that out. I'll leave a link in the description. Laughing Fox won the Oaklawn Park Invitational, the first running of the Oaklawn Park Invitational. And you also have Always Mining, the very good Maryland bred that has won everything at Laurel Park in the winter and now in the spring. So those are 3 very compelling new shooters. Always Mining is a horse that I've had my eye on all year, and I've liked him a lot, and I think in this Preakness field it doesn't necessarily look to be as strong as the Kentucky Derby field, and even as Preakness fields in the past. Always Mining is going to be my pick for the Preakness. I think he's really compelling. I like him. He has clearly shown that he can run on a Maryland racetrack, which that's very good for him. He's won everything at Maryland, and the Preakness is at Pimlico in Maryland, so that's very good sign for Always Mining. I will say, though, another twist of fate, I've been waiting for him to have that breakout victory after the El Camino Real Derby. And the El Camino Real Derby was on synthetics. I've been waiting for him to have that breakout performance on the dirt. He's been second twice in the Sunland Derby. He just ran out of ground. And I would say, and I don't know what happened to him in the Lexington Stakes. I just don't think he was 100% on that day. I really don't think they wanted to run him in the Lexington, but they had a chance to get into the Kentucky Derby. They took it, and ultimately it did not work out for them. But I think off the layoff, he's had some rest. They didn't go in the Pat Day Mile, which no one really thought that they were going to do because they had the guaranteed slot in the Preakness. And really, they probably, looking back on it, if they could do it again, they probably would have skipped the Lexington and just gone and tried or trained for the Preakness and prepared for it. But another twist of fate, I've been waiting for him to have that breakout performance on dirt because he had that commanding victory in the El Camino Real Derby. He hasn't had one of those yet on dirt. He hasn't had a victory on the dirt yet. I'm not saying that he can't get the dirt. I have seen two very strong second-place performances. I'm just waiting for the win for another twist of fate. I would not be surprised if he did win, but Always Mining will be my pick. There's also some other intriguing horses that are not necessarily favorites and are not going to be, the War of Wills, Improbables, another twist of fates, Always Minings that people are talking about. Warrior's Charge is one that comes to mind, and I will have the video for the Brad Cox Entries Preakness profile out later. But Warrior's Charge, a very impressive win in an allowance optional claiming race at Oaklawn Park. I will post that video because I know it's not the easiest thing to access. It's stuck in an Stakes Day recap at Oaklawn Park, so I will post that single race so you guys can see Warrior's Charge. It was like a 12 or 13 length romping win in that allowance optional claiming race. Now, I will say it's not a stakes race, so we don't know what Warrior's Charge can do in a stakes field, but Warrior's Charge did look very nice in that it wasn't just an optional claiming race. So we'll see if he has some talent. I think you can't rule him out. I think that does show, hey, he's got something in him, whether it's just being a very good horse in allowance races and then a horse that can't necessarily handle the stakes competition, or a horse that, could be a stakes winner. We'll see what Warrior's Charge gives us. We've also got Owendale, the other Brad Cox trainee, was very good in the Lexington Stakes. I don't know how much he'll progress from there. It just doesn't look to me like Owendale is in the class of some of the other horses this year, but he is a horse in the Preakness that has won a graded stakes race to Lexington, did beat another twist of fate, so we do have to take him seriously, and I am taking Owendale seriously. It's just that Owendale, for me, is not one of the horses that is on my radar as for win contender, but I do think Owendale does have some promise. I want to get to some of the other long shots in the Preakness this year, because this is a lot of the new shooters that were not good enough to get into the Kentucky Derby or weren't really on the Kentucky Derby trail at all. There's a lot of long shots like that fit that bill in this year's Preakness. And one of them is Market King, trained by D. Wayne Lucas. He is my sentimental horse that I am rooting for. Each time there's a race, I always look for the horse that, my pick that's a real actual pick. And then I've got the horse that, I'm kind of rooting for sentimental reasons, or maybe because I like the jockey or whatever you have. That is what Market King is for me. He is the only Wayne Lucas trainee in the race. Wayne Lucas was second last year in this race with Bravazzo. He came very close to winning it. And, it would just be a great thing for racing if Wayne Lucas could win another Triple Crown race. He would tie the record with the great trainer from the 1800s. His name is escaping me at this moment. I will leave that in the description. And Bob Baffert, who won his 7th Preakness last year. Dale Romans also has Everfest from Calumet Farm. And then also a horse that I did forget to speak on, Bourbon War. I talked about him a lot after the Fountain of Youth, how I thought that, him getting extra ground was going to pay off significantly. except in the Florida Derby, he did not get a pace to run into, which is why he ultimately was not able to get into the Kentucky Derby. Bourbon War, I think, is a very good horse if you give him a pace to run into. So if there's a hot pace up front in the Preakness, where there has in the past, Pimlico is a very speed favoring track, and it's not necessarily doesn't play that well into the favor of horses like Bourbon War. I'm not saying that Bourbon War can't get it, and I'm not saying that horses like him haven't won the Preakness, because that's not true. Cloud Computing a couple years ago, 2017, was one of those horses, not a deep closer, but he was a come from behind horse, and he was able to nab Classic Empire, who was on the lead for a majority of the race. But horses like Bourbon War and Signalman also, Signalman, I liked him a lot earlier in the year. I think he was very flat in the Fountain of Youth Stakes. Signalman, another horse that comes from the Fountain of Youth Stakes. I thought that he was very flat in the Fountain of Youth Stakes, and then he just got run down by Win in the Bluegrass, and that's ultimately why he was not able to get into the Kentucky Derby. I've always been waiting for Signalman. I don't think he's going to pop, but we don't know. I think he has some talent, but I don't know. Maybe that talent is just left from his 2-year-old. Maybe he just left that in his 2-year-old season. So a lot of intriguing horses, a lot of rooting interests. Again, I am rooting for Market King, even though I am not going to pick him. Market King is the sentimental choice of mine. The actual practical choice for me is Always Mining. I like him a lot. I think the fact that this race is in Maryland is very good for him. He's won everything at Laurel Park. Now, I do concede that Pimlico and Laurel Park are different racetracks, but New York breds tend to run very well, and New York horses, not even just New York breds, New York-based horses tend to run very well at Belmont, Saratoga, and Maryland horses tend to run well at Laurel Park. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. Not necessarily the benefit of the doubt. I'm just going to say I think he's going to run well at Pimlico. So that is the field for the Preakness. I will go over jockeys, assignments, and trainers right now. War of Will once again gets the one post. So Mark Casse said he is going to be on the front, so that is going to be something for War of Will that is going to have to go his way, as he's going to have to be able to get off the rail and into the lead again. Not necessarily the easiest thing to do. Not saying that it can't be done. American Pharoah did it a couple years ago. Actually, no, that was 4 years ago. So American Pharoah 4 years ago was able to do it. Not saying that it can't be done. Bourbon War, I think the number 2 post is good for him. If he doesn't break the best, it's not the worst for him. Bourbon War, I don't really think the post is that much of an issue for him. Warriors Charge and Improbable are in the 3 and 4 positions respectively. I forgot to mention for War of Will, same guys back from the Derby. Mark Casse trains, Tyler Gaffalione rides. Bourbon War, Mark Henning trains, Irad Ortiz rides. Brad Cox, I've said before, trains. Warriors Charge. Warriors Charge will be ridden by Javier Castellano, 2-time Preakness winner. Improbable, trained by Bob Baffert, ridden by Mike Smith. Mike Smith was always intended to get the mount on Improbable, and it just waited until the Preakness. Owendale, again trained by Brad Cox. Florent Giroux will ride. Market King will carry the hopes of the old guys. John Court will ride him, looking for his first Triple Crown race win. Wayne Lucas looking for his 7th win in the Preakness. Always Mining will be saddled by trainer Kelly Rubley and will be ridden by Daniel Centeno. Signalman, Kenneth McPeck trains. Brian Hernandez Jr. rides. Gustavo Delgado trains Bodie Express. Johnny Velasquez will ride. Bodie Express picks up Johnny V. That's a very good pickup for him. Everfest, trained by Dale Romans, will pick up Joel Rosario. Dale Romans' only Triple Crown race win was the Preakness in 2011 with Shackelford. Laughing Fox, trained by Steve Asmussen, Ricardo Santana Jr. Steve and Ricardo are like Belichick and Brady. Steve Asmussen puts Ricardo Santana Jr. on horses. They win races. Ricardo's his go-to guy. Laughing Fox benefits significantly from the rider. Another Twist of Fate, trained by Blaine Wright, will be ridden by Jose Ortiz. Michael Trombetta trains Win, and Julian Pimentel will ride him in the Preakness. So those are your trainers and jockeys for the Preakness. The post position order is the order that I went through the horses. So from War of Will to Win Win Win, those are your post positions. I think the number 13 post actually benefits Win 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 a lot. I don't think another Twist of Fate is going to suffer from being on the outside. I don't really think there's a lot of horses that are going to suffer from post positions. I think it's kind of different from the Kentucky Derby. Although War of Will didn't suffer as much, I think he benefited a lot from the scratch of high call, but I don't think there's a lot of horses getting screwed by post positions in the Preakness. Now, I will say about Pimlico, it's historically a very speed favoring track. We've seen that a lot, and it's also a favorite heavy track. Favorites have won the Preakness a lot of times. I think it's something like 22%. That doesn't seem like it's that high of a number, but keep in mind the longest shot ever to win the Preakness was only 22-1. That was Master Derby in 1975. Excuse me, I was going to say 1977. Master Derby 1975, only 22-1. Last long shot to win the Preakness was Cloud Computing, 13-1. You had Justify last year, 2016, Exaggerator, second choice. American Pharoah, California Chrome, Oxbow was a long shot in 2013. And then you can go back through the years to see what the odds were for some of those other horses. But in recent years, it's tend to be very favorite leaning, and that's what Pimlico is. It's speed favoring and it's favorite leaning. So that's your preview for the Preakness. I will have the rest of the Preakness profile episodes out before the Preakness time tomorrow. There may be some that will come out Saturday morning. I don't know how I'm going to get them all out, but I'm going to have to consolidate them a lot more than I originally thought I was because I lost a couple of days of recording. Those will all be out, though. I will not make the same error that I did in the Kentucky Derby, and you will not have to go to Twitter to see my reaction to that. I do want to talk about the Black-Eyed Susans. My pick for that race is Always Shopping. She won the Gazelle, passed up the Kentucky Oaks. She's going to be the favorite. I picked Bellafina in the Kentucky Oaks. I'm going to continue with horses like Always Shopping. I actually don't know if she's going to be the favorite. She's my pick, though. If someone wants to let me know, I haven't checked the odds yet of the Black-Eyed Susan. Probably not the best professional thing to do, but Always Shopping is my pick for the Black-Eyed Susan. I also want to quickly talk about the Peter Pan Stakes that was this weekend. It was a little bit less intriguing for me. I was really a big fan of Bourbon War potentially going in the Peter Pan Stakes because I thought that Peter Pan is a horse, or Bourbon War is a horse that's tailor-made for Belmont Park. And I thought that Peter Pan was a good stepping stone toward a possible run in the Belmont Stakes. He's going in the Preakness now. So Todd Pletcher saddled a bunch of horses that were running in the Peter Pan this weekend. But it was won by a horse trained by Stanley Hogue, ridden by Luis Saya's Global Campaign. Global Campaign has not committed to run in the Belmont Stakes. They're looking into the possibility of that. I hope he does, because I usually tend to like the horses that come out of the Peter Pan Stakes. Of course, it has produced a number of Belmont Stakes winners. I don't have the number off the top of my head, but the last horse to complete the Peter Pan Belmont Stakes double was Tonalist. Tonalist did that in spoiling California Chrome's Triple Crown bid. So that's it for this episode of the Racing Rundown podcast. I know it is kind of very late toward the Preakness, but I wanted to A, wait for everything to come out, and B, I lost yesterday for recording. Unfortunately, I was not able to get anything out yesterday. I did re-upload the Bourbon War episode. That's as much progress as I did. Unfortunately, I made the mistake that I always make when I record, is that I forgot to mute one of the races, and I didn't check it. I just uploaded it because I wanted to get that out. That was my fault completely. And my opinions changed on some of the horses for the Brad Cox video, so I was not able to get that out and changed in time. So I'm sorry for all the delays in recording. Hopefully this won't happen next year with the Preakness and with the Kentucky Derby. I'll do my best to make sure that it doesn't happen. I did also say that I had an announcement waiting for the end of the episode that was supposed to come out on Thursday. Now it's here. The announcement is that Racing Rundown has secured its first guest for the podcast. Hall of Fame jockey, three-time Kentucky Derby winner Gary Stevens has agreed to come on the podcast at some point. I have not figured out when that is, but huge thanks to Gary. I will keep you guys updated on when that is. That will be live streamed, So I will give you guys an opportunity to ask the Hall of Famer a question if you have one for him and if it isn't already answered. That's it for this episode. I will see you guys in the episodes of Preakness Profile that are coming out tonight, and I will see you tomorrow, Saturday, for the live stream. As always, you can follow us on social media, on Instagram at Racing Rundown Podcast, on Twitter at Rundown Racing. Twitter is the best place to interact with me and the best place to get live, up-to-date opinions from me about everything that's going on in horse racing. I will be live on Saturday on YouTube. You can subscribe to us there, Racing Rundown, and you can get us on wherever you get your podcasts at. So that's it for this episode. I will see you guys tomorrow. Good luck playing the Preakness.
Then the outside, here's Proverb. He's closed a lot of ground for Mike Smith. Warriors charge past mid-stretch with a 6-length advantage over Hidden Ruler. Proverb is outside of Soldado. Then comes Dobbins G, and Warriors charge has absolutely dominated throughout, and he is going to win, and he is going to win big. Hidden Ruler is second. Warriors charge. Warriors charge won by 7.